Hello everybody and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clips. And today for this broadcast I'm going to feature another video that we filmed with one of our experts who was a speaker at our conference. We got a lot of great footage out of the conference, and so I think it's fun to share some of the better stuff with you. This is an interview with Dr. Janice Stanger. You might have caught her a couple weeks ago when she talked about bone broth. And I love Dr. Stanger. She's just one of the best evidence-based presenters I've ever met. And one of the things that I think she does really well is she helps people understand how their bodies work. And she said, if you understand how your bodies work and you understand how nutrition works in the body, it becomes really, really easy to listen to an idea, check it out, and say, you know what, that's really a stupid idea. And so, hence her video on bone broth a couple weeks ago. But anyway, this video is about nutrition in pregnancy. And very, very important because pregnant women are quite vulnerable to bad messages, very concerned, of course, about doing everything right by the baby, very nervous about making bad decisions and good decisions. So I think an audience of people who have a really vested interest in making evidence-based decisions and understanding how their bodies work. So once again, a lot of you have been emailing me. If you want to have a look at the conference videos, all the lectures, including the ones done by Dr. Stanger, we recorded the whole conference, and you can watch those videos online. Send an email to me at pampopper@msn.com and enjoy this video with Dr. Janice Stanger. Hello everybody and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clips. And this last week and this week I'm focusing on interviews that I was able to do at the conference with our fabulous guest speakers who are not always in the same room with me. This is a once-a-year opportunity to have people who I really respect in this field to come and speak to our conference, and also to do this type of thing where you can talk to most of the people who watch this are not here in Columbus right now for this conference. So we're filming this the day the conference starts. You're seeing this a couple of weeks later. Another one, if you watched last Thursday's video clip, because some of you watch all of these, you probably know a little bit about Dr. Stanger, but in case you missed it, Dr. Janice Stanger has a PhD in human aging. She is the author of a great book called The Perfect Formula Diet. PerfectFormulaDiet.com is her website. And one of her conference presentations, actually a two-part presentation, was on dangerous misunderstandings about your body. Phenomenal, information-packed two lectures. And what we're going to talk about today briefly is some excerpts concerning nutrition from a program on pregnancy that Janice has put together and will be available sometime next year. And you are a marvelous researcher. You know, there are a handful, tiny handful of people on the planet who, when they write something, I know it's correct. I can take it to the bank. I don't have to check it. Very tiny handful of people. You and Peter Goethe. I mean, like I said, I can name maybe 5 or 6. You're one of those people. So, perfect person to do something on pregnancy, to write a course on pregnancy. I have lamented for a long time that the way pregnancy is treated by the medical profession is if it's an illness.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember a good friend of mine telling her doctor one day, we've had a profound misunderstanding about what's going on with me. See, you seem to think I'm sick, and I think I'm pregnant, and those are not the same thing. And of course, they start with, you need vitamins, and you need supplements, and you need this test, and this vaccine, and that, almost as if the human body is not capable of conceiving and building and delivering a child without some type of medical intervention on not just a little bit, but all the time. So talk a little bit about some of the things that you cover in this course and the things that you find most interesting about pregnancy and nutrition.
Well, I try to cover the course from why it's important for the woman to make good lifestyle choices. Like, a lot of people might not even understand that the lifestyle choices they make when they're pregnant are really important to the outcomes to themselves and to their child, and that in fact these outcomes will persist throughout life. Because there's something called fetal programming, which has been shown that as a baby develops in the womb, what happens in the womb really manifests itself through the entire rest of the child's life. What people might not realize is things that happen to the mother can also affect the rest of her life. So, for example, if a woman develops diabetes when she's pregnant, it's called gestational diabetes. her risk of developing type 2 diabetes within the next 10 years soars tremendously. And if she develops severe hypertension problems in pregnancy, then her risk of developing heart disease later in life really soars. So it's very critical for both the mother and the baby that she have a good experience health-wise, and that there's no guarantees in pregnancy. I mean, you and I know that. A woman can do everything right and have a bad outcome, so she should never berate herself or feel responsible. But she can very much change the probability of having a good outcome. So one thing that women really need to understand, again, this kind of applies to everybody, but especially in pregnancy, it's so important because you have kind of two lives at stake, is that she really needs to understand what is a risk factor. What does it mean that something is a risk factor? So I give a kind of detailed example of what a risk factor is and how you should think about risk factors that will hopefully make it very intuitive to people. You know, and I talk about how the body is transformed in pregnancy. I mean, it's a major transformation. The cardiovascular system has changed. The woman grows a whole new organ, the placenta. It's like, you could think of it as like growing a new liver or kidney. You know, you're growing this whole new organ. You know, hormones change drastically, the way the kidney works. I mean, there's just so many changes. So I think a lot of women don't really understand this, and it gets back to the idea of you need to understand your body. So she can understand how her body's changing, as well as what most women focus on, which is how's my baby developing. That's what they really care, but it's all intertwined together. Mm-hmm. And I talk about common medical issues in pregnancy, things that, you know, for most people aren't very serious. A lot of people get them, and occasionally they can be serious, but for most people they're not very serious. So it would be things like backaches or constipation or nausea and vomiting. Talk about the really serious medical issues, which can be life-threatening, both for the mother and the baby. Things like the hypertensive issues, the gestational diabetes, certain infections, problems with the placenta, preterm birth. There's quite a few things that can be really life and ability endangering that we need to know about. And I make sure I lay all that groundwork before I get into lifestyle choices, because I think the problem is if you get into lifestyle choices before women really understand their decisions are important and what those decisions are based on, it then becomes harder for people to maybe be motivated and make the right choices.
Well, the other thing that happens if you don't understand the way your body works is it turns into the he said, she said. Right. When you get pregnant, everybody has advice for you. Your mother has advice, and your sister, and your neighbor, and your coworkers, and everybody's got something to tell you. So one person says it's okay to do this while you're pregnant. Another person says, oh my gosh, you can't do that. Another person says, take this supplement, take that supplement. If you took all the supplements that people told you to take when you're pregnant, you wouldn't have enough time in the day to pop all the pills. Right. You need more protein. No, you don't need more protein. You should exercise. No, it's dangerous to exercise. And so you get into the person with the strongest personality, or who seems to have the most impressive credentials, determines the decisions that get made, and that's really not the right way to do it.
Right.
And so it is important to understand the changes that are made on a much more detailed level. I mean, everybody gets the big idea. I'm growing a baby, right? There's a lot of mystery in that. But like you were talking, the placenta is an organ. Right. You're growing another organ in your body. And it has a significant importance to this baby and what's going to happen. And you mentioned something that I would like for you to just give a little more detail on. When you said fetal programming, that the decisions that you make, give an example of a decision that a woman would never think about, or few women would think about, that would affect fetal programming.
Something that, for example, would affect the baby's subsequent insulin resistance.
Okay.
Or the baby's subsequent risk of heart disease, things like that. You know, and what the risk is of taking too many supplements, what can happen to the child, for example. And you actually mentioned this on a past video clips, but I mentioned this too in the program. If a woman is given too many calcium supplements, and later on, you know, and there's actually bad outcomes to her on that, but to focus on the fetal programming. This was done in Gambia, which is a country in Africa, and when the researchers found that there were, you know, immediate physically bad effects on the woman, when they went back about 8 to 10 years later to look at the children, they found that the children whose mother had been given these calcium supplements had problems with their growth. So, for example, the female children tended to be lighter and not to have grown as much as their peers whose mothers hadn't been given these supplements. And it kind of had the opposite effect on the male children. They tended to be, more fat, have bigger waist circumference. So it also had a different opposite effects on male and female children. I don't know if anybody really knows why, but that's an example of fetal programming that can be completely unanticipated and very innocent because, of course, I have no doubt that the researchers intended to really help these women and children, but it didn't work out that way.
Right, and that's in a country where there probably are some deficiencies.
Yes.
So think about how much more exaggerated the effect might be in a country where people don't have any deficiencies, and now you're just piling more of something
right
into the body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's just a lot of effects that happen, when the child either has an excess of nutrients or a deficiency or the timing is wrong. For example, on iron, one thing I will talk about is iron supplements, not necessarily here, but I talk about them when I'm going to be giving my presentation. And what they found is, the iron supplements, if they're given too early in pregnancy, because early in pregnancy is when the fetus is first developing, and it's developing, its limbs and all its organ systems and that kind of thing. And so the first trimester, the body's really primarily trying to defend itself by saying, don't send me any poisons. I can do fine. I don't really need much nutrients, but just don't poison me. That iron is actually a toxin, and it increases the risk of birth defects. Mm-hmm. So talk about fetal programming. That's not even something you have to wait 40 years to see.
That's right now.
Exactly. And so, people just don't really understand these things. Like, iron is an extremely toxic substance, so the body regulates its absorption. It actively regulates its absorption all the time. You don't want to absorb all the iron you eat, or you probably wouldn't live very long because it's such a toxic substance. But later in pregnancy, the second and especially the third trimester, the mother really does need more iron, but it doesn't mean she has to eat more iron, because in fact, her own iron absorption regulating system kind of upregulates itself, so she just starts absorbing a lot more iron, because the hormone that would block her from absorbing iron is then suppressed during pregnancy. So people really understood how these things work, and this is what I intend to talk about in the program, so people will have an easier time making decisions, because they'll see, like, here maybe there's something going on. There's something going on, we don't quite know what it is, but we have to pay attention to it and respect it and make decisions based on it. But on these other things, it's just sheer nonsense.
Right. Well, first of all, the couple things with pregnancy, more is better is the mantra.
Yes.
Okay, you can't get enough of all these nutrients. And the second thing is that it's important to be really informed, because when a woman is pregnant, she feels very vulnerable. I want to do anything to help my child and my developing fetus. And so when a doctor says, take iron, take calcium, do this, do that, there's a tendency to feel like I should do what I'm told, because this is such an important thing, and I'll feel forever guilty. But nobody talks so much about the people who end up feeling guilty because they should have not done what was told and found out later that it wasn't such a good idea. So this really goes along with and has added importance, I think, the informed decision making, know now instead of saying I wish I'd known. This is an important issue from that standpoint.
Oh, absolutely. And in terms of all these supplements, it's very frustrating when you're doing research to try to put together a program on pregnancy, because the vast majority of the nutrition research has not been done on either foods or patterns of eating. It's been done on supplements and specific nutrients. I mean, there's, hundreds, if not thousands, of articles on things like, folic acid and iron and calcium and all this kind of stuff. But when you look for patterns of eating in pregnancy, there's almost nothing. So people, again, they get distracted, where we could be putting our research dollars as looking in specific foods or specific classes of foods, or best yet, ideally, patterns of eating. Now, that's hard to study, so maybe we tone it down a little bit. But, to really just look at nutrients, it doesn't make sense. I call it the Lego model of a baby. And I came to this realization. There's this really cool Lego store near where I live in Oregon, and they have all these bins out, and you can buy all these, there just have to be tens of thousands of Lego pieces in these, and build different things from it, right? You could build a car or a truck, and they have bins where you can get the car and truck parts and so on for all these things. And I thought, wow, that's what people think of their babies. They think of their babies as these little Lego building blocks, and here's the folic acid building block, and
take it from the bins.
And then they put it together, but instead of building a little plastic car, they're building a baby. Well, yeah, you can build a plastic car out of Lego blocks, but you can't build a baby out of pills. And yet people have that complete mindset. And there's just like whole books about this thing, what supplements should you take in pregnancy, and not, really so much a focus on the foods where there's, not nearly as much research as you and I would like. We love scientific, solid, well-done studies as providing really good information we can share with people, but there's not nearly as many of them as there should be.
Now, see, I say this all the time. Every week in this office, I quote you. Okay, but I try to always remember to tell people where I got this. So you will hear me. I'll bet money, half my net worth, in one of these videos. I will say that nutrition during pregnancy is not like Lego blocks. I will use that. That's such a beautiful analogy, that you can build a car with blocks from the bin, but you can't build a baby with pills from the Whole Food store, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that's fabulous. Well, as always, I always learn something. That's why I love having you come here. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but I'm sitting in the front row taking notes, because I always learn something new, and I always learn a new way of explaining something complicated to people that really makes sense to them. So thank you so much for sharing with everybody and sharing with me.
Glad
being
to be
here this year. So that's it for video clips. As usual, pass this on to anybody who you think might enjoy watching it. Hit the subscribe button so you can get these videos every single week, because I put out videos on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I'll be back to you on Thursday with more news.